Hi, this is Elaine. Today we're going to cover some more of step 4 of the ACA 12 steps. Today we want to talk about relationships, which is pretty much why most people get involved in the program in the first place. The relationship's ending, it's about to end, or they're still stuck, with memories of somebody, or maybe they've been alone for a long time and would like to have a relationship. But it seems like so much hinges on that. And a lot of what we do in ACA has to do, well, with our dysfunctional families of origin. And then we're dysfunctional, and our relationships, as we go forward into adult life, are affected by all that trauma and the stuff that we didn't learn the correct way, let's say, as children. So, relationships are ways in which we really learn a lot about ourselves. In fact, a lot of people say that the reason we have relationships is to learn about ourselves. It doesn't seem like the right reason, but it does tend to be the reason that we get into relationships. We want love. We crave commitment and belonging, or at least belonging. And so we do the best we can in relationships. There are about two exercises that I covered in the part A of step 4, and then this is only just one more exercise, and then that leaves like 9 more exercises. So I want to repeat again, I can't say this enough. When you decide to do this program and you make the commitment, you are going to have to be serious enough maybe to get a workbook or to look up online whatever materials and PDFs and stuff that you can find from this workbook, or at least follow the best you can with what we're doing in these videos, and get yourself a notebook or pencil and paper. I think to have success, it's really good to do the writing and the charts and really get into the nitty-gritty. Relationships are things that we don't always want to look back on, especially if it has to do with mistakes that we made. But it is so valuable. Again, take your time, be good to yourself, be kind to yourself, take breaks, but you've got to do this exercise especially. This is the one that's going to make a big difference. So just as a refresher, we're still on step 4, so let's go over it again, what step 4 is. We made a searching, we have to go deep, and fearless, it's a bit scary. Inventory, which means we make a lot of lists of ourselves, and it's mostly about ourselves. But in the last video, we talked a little bit about our parents. We did inventories that had to do with our stories with our parents. And it was searching, but we want to hold our parents blameless. I guess in the same way, again, we talked about this, but blameless meaning even if they had blame, we're not holding on to the blame because we don't move forward. In the same way, when we look at our relationships, we don't want to hold on to blame. And there's a very, very important reason for that. And I'm going to talk about it. It's right behind this. But this is our step 4. The inventory is where you do the work, a lot of writing. But I promise you, at the end of it, you're going to be like so much better. And you don't want to do this work to change other people and say, see, you should be doing this. I learned about this 4th step. You need to start doing that step. No, it's about you. It's always about you. And it's about you showing up for yourself, which will cause you to have, let's say, better relationships. Okay, it is in step 4, and it is in this particular exercise that we're going to do today that I made the biggest discovery in my life. It should be the most obvious thing, but it's not, and it isn't obvious for most people. The most important lesson that I learned is that we choose everything. I put a little almost, because things happen that we don't expect and we can't do anything about, but most of the time we choose. Okay? And if this doesn't make sense to you right now, I'm hoping by the end of this video it makes more sense. This is what frees you, is knowing that you choose. Even if you choose badly, you know that you choose. And then you might think, oh, but then I blame myself and then I feel so bad and then it's like, I'm beating myself up. No, we also, once we figured it out that we choose everything, we're free from blaming others. And why that's so good is that we can move on. We just free of that stuff in the past, those people that we used to blame, and waiting around for that to be different somehow. It's not going to probably be different. So I don't know why, but this word choose is so powerful. It is. It's really powerful. And you'll see as we go through things today. Okay, so because we're talking about relationships and because this is the ACA program and we're trying to break patterns in our life. Our patterns were set for us as children. And we just keep following them. And as adults, we don't often realize that the stuff that we do, the dumb stuff or the dysfunctional stuff, even some of the good stuff too. We got to remember, we're not going through life just screwing up every day. We're doing good things too. But there's patterns that we've been following because of our family of origin, okay? And we learned from our parents. And we also had coping behaviors. So we did different things. And those patterns went into our relationships. And I thought before we do the worksheet, now what happened to my sticker? Here it is. There's a sticker under there. Okay. And I don't know if you could see this so well. When I move this, it sometimes collapses. So let's see, we'll move this up a bit. Not sure. Okay. We just do the best we can today. Alrighty, so relationship patterns. One of them is trying to change and fix people. This is the worst one. I put this at the top because this is what we do. We're always trying to fix people. Sometimes that's because we're trying to fix our family of origin, or even if we fix other people, we don't have to fix ourselves. It is such a harmful thing to do, to fix people. People are responsible for their own lives. I think sometimes people need our help, and sometimes it's appropriate, but most of the time it's not. If they don't own it, okay, they have to own it, not you. You don't own them. You own yourself. So that's one of the patterns. And I know in my case, it happened again and again. So sabotaging each other. I think we do this when we want to get out of a relationship, but we don't know how to be honest about it. And we know what the other one's triggers are. And we want to force the other person sometimes even to say, I don't want to be with you anymore. But we know that we sabotage them to get them to say that so that we don't have to take the blame. It's so funny how hard we work to escape blame. It's amazing how much effort we put in when we could just be honest instead. But we sabotage others and they might sabotage us. So we need to understand and recognize that when it happens. And choose, when that happens, make the choice to see it and say, I think this person's trying to sabotage this relationship. Okay, we avoid making clear expectations. Expectations up front. That's coming up too. We'll talk about up front, but always we should make clear expectations throughout our relationship. So when we expect something from somebody, we should probably say something. If that person's not amenable to our expectations, at least we know. And most of what this chart is that we're going to talk about, in fact, the entire thing depends on our expectations. So Just keep that in mind. Expectations, they're not so good. We think they're good. I have expectations of you, and you think, oh, it's because I'm principled and I have expectations. But if you hide those expectations, or you expect someone to read your mind, or if your expectations are not what their expectations are, or or they're unattainable expectations, they're not good to have. Okay, so that's a big part of this worksheet that we're going to go through in a minute. Not being upfront about values and principles. So values and principles are a little bit like of a deeper level. This might be just like, I expect you to like help me with the dishes every night. But this one is more about, in my faith, the man is always, he's the one who calls the shots, let's say. And I believe that it's very strongly, let's say, the man said, believes that, but he doesn't say it because he wants you in his life, and he thinks eventually you'll be able to, succumb to his power or something. And you might have the same thing in reverse, and you might have like your values are different too. Like you think that in your faith or your belief system that you should do a lot of service for others. There should be more volunteering, and you should be altruistic. And maybe your partner is not that way. And those are things you need to talk about up front. Or you need to at least pick up on it in the conversation, what that person's values are. Why would you have expectations of somebody to have your values when everything that you've seen says that they have different values? So that's important to notice that. And it's a little deeper than some of our other expectations. Really important things. And some of them deal breakers if we don't agree. So, okay. Holding on too long. I learned this thing I read a book. I can't remember what it's called, but it has to do with our fallacies and our thinking. And the term that the author used was sunk cost. It's one of those things like if you invest in a stock and you've been putting money into it and it's been growing and you keep on putting money into it, but the stock is starting to fall. How long before you sell your shares and get out of there? Because it might be that it's going to just plummet. And so you think, but I've been putting in this investment for a long time. But you know that, like, if you drop out of it, you've already put that time, you feel like it's wasted. Well, it's still going to be wasted if you don't, get out, and you keep, each day you're going to keep on sinking more in of your money and your time and everything else. And we do that with relationships. So our relationships are, I've been in this relationship for 2 years, I can't give up now. Maybe you have to, because maybe it'll be 3 years that you wasted in a relationship. When you realize that you have held on and you haven't had your needs met, or the other person feels that they haven't had their needs met, and you can't give that to them, that sunk cost shouldn't be the thing, because you've gotten something out of the relationship. Whatever fun you've had, whatever tender moments you've had, and memories that you've created, maybe you've gone to some great places, maybe you've learned some wonderful lessons. You need to know when to say goodbye. And it's a pattern to stay in a relationship. It's not a good pattern when it's time to go. When is one of those times that you need to go? Okay. Okay, you are ignoring red flags. I think the classic example, because this is the adult children of alcoholics, is that you're in a relationship with somebody, or you just got into a relationship, and that person has an addictive personality or is an alcoholic, and they tell you maybe that they're alcoholics, or they just were alcoholics. And the idea, I think, with AA is that you always say, I am, because you acknowledge the power it has. Anyway, but the person says, I'm going to quit drinking for you, or I'm going to quit drinking just like right away. I'm going to do it tomorrow. And then that becomes like 1 week, and then it becomes, don't bug me, I'm going to get around to it eventually. So we want to see those things. We want to think that they're blue flags or green flags, and sometimes it's not till the end of the relationship that we say, oh, I guess it was a red flag. So those relationships, we get better at it. We'll get better at seeing those red flags, but mostly because we're going to do this inventory today, this worksheet. We really want to see those not at the end, but at the beginning. But it's a pattern. If you're a rescuer, if you're a fixer, maybe this is some way that you try to fix your family of origin, vicariously by choosing somebody who is a hopeless cause. Okay, so not good for you to stay in a relationship. You might be neglecting your own needs by doing that. And then finally, not asking for respect. Sometimes a person is not so bad that, like, they're an alcoholic or something, but you've gotten into a relationship with somebody who doesn't feel it's necessary to show you respect. They may not even show you disrespect, but they don't see you. They don't acknowledge you very often. It's very rare that they say that they love you unless you're like leaving. You're turning the door knob or something. Or they just out and out disrespect you. And you usually can catch that really early in a relationship. But as long as you tolerate it, what you tolerate will continue. And so, not having that respect, it's a pattern. You continue to put up with things. Or you shouldn't show disrespect to anybody else either. But again, you've got to make a choice for yourself. Will you honor yourself? That's a big word for me that it took me a long time to learn that I should honor myself. That wasn't selfish. Honoring myself. Who deserves me? What kind of behavior do I deserve? And that will make a big difference. And you choose it. So these patterns, these are all the negative patterns they're not all. There's more. I imagine you could add to this list, but these were the ones that I could think of as I was, preparing for this today. So those patterns are going to show up. Well, they're going to show up in this worksheet. The tape is gone, so I'm going to put some tape. Okay, so again, I already talked about spreadsheets, so I don't need to belabor that. But I really think it's good to spend the time, get the pencil out, the pen, get some paper or a spreadsheet or something. Okay, so the worksheet, why we need a video just for this is because you will really benefit by seeing the patterns, and you'll really benefit by understanding the choices that you make, because most of our choices are about people. We make choices about our jobs and, like, should I turn left or right on the street, or where should I buy my vegetables today? But our relationships, they inform us so much, what our life is about, and it's that's where we want to start. Okay, so I just put down 6 people, and these are all fictional people. They're not real names of people in my life, and they don't necessarily represent relationships of mine. Okay, they're just like false. But when I did do step 4, I think I probably had like twice as many people on my sheet, because I wanted to cover everything. I wanted to cover almost everybody. I learned different lessons from different people about my relationship styles. And I also, I just want to make sure that I don't make mistakes again. And that I really do choose better. So we'll start with Joey, and we'll just say Joey was the first boyfriend. I don't know, you can't see this necessarily But let's say with Joey, I wanted marriage, all right? And I wanted him to get a better job. I was too young, probably, to have that expectation, and so was Joey. It was my first romantic relationship, but I think sometimes when we first like fall in love and we're really enamored of somebody, we get all these ideas and we have stars in our eyes about the future. And it might not be the right expectation to have. Sometimes it works. You find the person you love at 18 or 19 years old, and you live with them the rest of your life, and it's wonderful. But I think that's probably not the case in a lot of relationships, at least in these modern days, because our parents don't choose for us, right? We have to go through all this ourselves. So marriage, getting a better job, I had those expectations of Joey. But he wanted to party, and he wanted to keep his minimum wage jobs and not like improve himself. But I was one of these, and I was the responsible one, the serious one, probably because in my family of origin, that's the role I played, right? So I just really wanted a relationship to legitimize the fact, and to believe that I was an adult now. And I want to hold on to Joey. So I had these ideas, but he didn't have those ideas. Um, and so what was we had dependent behavior. And what I did is I held on to little promises. So I was dependent on those things. As long as he said little things like, "Yeah, we'll get married someday. Just not right now," or let's. I'm having a lot of fun. He's telling you his expectations. He's telling you his needs. He wants to have fun. He's not serious. And then sometimes, because he was so playful and fun and young, I had to bail him out when he got in trouble. I had to do things for him because I'm the responsible party, and his dependent behavior was to have somebody to kind of take care of him. He wasn't ready to be an adult yet, but I thought I was, and I thought being an adult was bailing him out. That was a dependent behavior that helped me like continue my role in his life, which was to fix him. So, um, and why did it end? He lost another job. Like I came to my senses. Like he keeps losing his jobs. I got to more and more pay for our dates, and he doesn't seem to be too upset about it. And I'm just tired of it. So, and I'm young enough to walk away without it being too much. Like, or maybe he just walked away because he's tired of my complaining and bitching at him. I might want to blame him, like you shouldn't like say I'm bitching at you, and that's mean, and you should be responsible. But that's not my problem. That's his problem. My life, his life. I'm not married to him yet, so I should just let him go and let him be free because that's what he wants. In fact, in all this, you find out that the other person wants something, and you need to honor it, even if you don't think it's appropriate. It's not your responsibility to run their life. Okay, next one. Francis will say would be my best friend while I was with Joey. And maybe Francis tried like to say, Joey doesn't seem like he's like very interested in committing to you. He doesn't seem very responsible. But maybe most of the time my expectations is she would listen to my things about Joey. Like I wanted to be able to keep going to Francis and saying, Joey just always does this stuff, and why does he do this? And I want to get married, and I saw this wedding dress, and and I expect Francis to listen to that. And it's not that Francis isn't a good friend. It's just that maybe, it could be Francis just doesn't feel that committed to me as a best friend. Okay? But I should accept that and understand that that's the level of commitment that she's willing to do, is to listen to it a little bit, give me some quick advice, and just like, but she doesn't want me to come crying to her. Okay? That was what my expectations were, that I could just collapse anytime I want. And also I wanted it to be reciprocal. Like I was kind of hoping she'd come to me about her problems with her boyfriend, but she kind of keeps that to herself. And I'm like, Why do I tell you everything and then you don't like share with me? That's silly. It's dumb expectations. When someone tells you what their boundaries are, you've got to really respect them. And you could say anything you want about what they should do because they're your friend. Um, but this is what they've told you they're willing to do. They've shown you who they are, and you need to understand that. So, what happened is that what I got instead of what I expected was she would look away, she would act bored, and after the breakup, she wasn't there. She just wasn't there. She was busy, and I had to like cry alone, and and maybe she sent me a text. Oh, that's too bad, you know. Um, and I remember with my friend, my fictional friend, that I called too much. I was always soliciting things, and I wasn't able to get that same relationship back from her. And I planned everything. So if we were doing fun things together, which we often didn't while I was with Joey anyway, right? But I got tired of that. But that was my choice to plan everything. I could have just sat back and waited for her to plan, or maybe just realized she's just not going to do that. So we had a big argument, and she said I was a bummer, and I probably was. And that's hurtful, and I could be angry about that, but I made the choice to tell her everything. And I didn't have to do that. They should have understood that I made that choice. Okay, I'm gonna keep saying that choice. Okay, I'm not gonna want to belabor all these things, but sometimes we have a family member. I'm gonna call this my sister Jennifer, and I was trying to fix her. I wanted her to go to therapy because we came from a dysfunctional family, and maybe I had gone to therapy, and I thought, well, she should go to therapy too. Um, I had done the 12 steps, obviously. I hadn't figured out some things, but you know, maybe I just kept thinking that she would be where I was. And maybe my role as the hero child or the rescuer child or something, she wasn't that role. And she wasn't in a place, she didn't want to have those same kinds of goals. And the relationship didn't end. Maybe I'm still doing that, you know. And I was really just trying to fix the family through her, and that's not fair. And she has to have her own commitment. And maybe if I just would make better choices, she'd see it. Okay, but she can make her choice, and I don't have to force it on her or guilt her into it or something. Um, all right. So let's say we have boyfriends, we have a husband, we have another boyfriend. Um, we already talked about one boyfriend, but I'm going to just briefly say, what if you had two different religions? And what you liked each other initially, you really did, and there was sex appeal and all kinds of things, but he was of one faith and you were of another faith. Or he had an ideology that was about something that I really disagreed with. And he didn't quite like my stuff either with my religion. And then what we did is we used our religion to sabotage each other, because at some point we realized that the commitment's not going to happen, but we kind of want to stay in the relationship for what we're getting out of it, but it's not good for us. So we're thinking, well, if I sabotage it, eventually it will end, and I can blame him because he'll try to break up with me, but I sabotaged him to get him to do that. That's kind of cheating. That's not very fair, but it is what people do. They sabotage, and it's one of those patterns, and that's what I got, was a lot of that, avoiding commitment. But I did have dependent behavior sometimes. I go to his church because I thought, look, if I go to your church, you should go to mine, right? And still kind of thinking maybe they'll change and then you'll be happy. So it's a bit of a pendulum thing, trying to get someone to change to fit your idea of what the relationship should be, but also sabotaging and pushing the person away at the same time. You could be doing this pendulum thing with the person. Okay. Oh boy, we learn a lot through our when we actually commit to a marriage, and let's say the marriage ended, and we had expectations, the nice home, help with the chores. Oh boy, and help with the children, and um, and maybe we expected things like more romance or something also, in addition to all these other things. Now, by the time we marry somebody, we should have figured out all these things, whether or not that person's really going to commit with raising the kid, whether or not that person is really going to put in some time with the chores. We would have seen this already, right? Do we think it's going to get better just because we got married? How many people do that? They get, okay, but once we get married, he'll really do it because it's a different thing. Yeah, it is. It is a different thing. You're married and they're still like that. Or maybe they were to keep you, did some of those things, but not consistently. But you figured when they get married, they're really going to commit and do all that stuff. Okay, but a lot of times I just like take on all the responsibility because I don't want to rock the boat. I want to stay in the marriage. Sunk cost, okay? I accepted abuse, but he's going to get better. Sunk cost. I've been with this man this much time and he'll eventually get better. And I've already tried so hard. Um, I did more and more of the work around the house, okay? So I did all this stuff to try to keep him because I don't want to end him. It's embarrassing and shameful to have a divorce, right? And we stay in. Okay, and I got sick, and let's say I got an illness or something from stress or from working too hard or just because. And he didn't support me, and that led us to get divorced. And then finally, at the end, I could become a commitment phobe with Ralph. And Ralph's actually a good guy, but maybe Ralph is trying too hard to change me. Like I'm over changing people. I just want to have fun. And I'm kind of like Joey now. And and I want him to be a mentor to my kids. He just wants to tell them when they're doing something wrong. I'm not liking that. Okay, he wants to move in. I'm thinking I need my space. He's always checking on me. That makes me kind of paranoid. You know, just let me be alone. Sometimes I'm not so dependent on him. So my dependent behavior is like actually to avoid that. And maybe it's a good reason, but I need to figure it out. Like I made this choice to be with Ralph, but do I make the choice to continue with Ralph? Do I go on with this relationship? Um, at some point, he gives me an ultimatum. Like somewhere up here, I probably gave somebody an ultimatum, but he gave me an ultimatum, and that was it. I just said, you know what? I'd be honest with myself. I don't want this. So the worksheet, think of what you learn when you look at the patterns, first of all, okay? And I don't even think the workbook has, you put the patterns down, but I'm not sure. Might be somewhere else in this whole thing, but I think is really worthwhile. So I added that. Uh, you see it in here though, don't you? You see the patterns. If you go through the relationship worksheet and another relationship comes into your life, or or we'll just say the possibility of one, you might make a better choice. How often do we just do things like, think about this. I like the metaphor of you're driving a car. Okay, you're driving the car, and once you learn to drive and you've been doing it for even a month, you do it pretty automatically. And I mean, you're safe too because you're programmed to see the lights, to see the signs, to see the bumper, to watch your speed. You're doing all those things automatically. But you just noticed because there was a pothole in the road, and you have to kind of pay attention to that. So maybe the first time you hit the pothole and you're like, oh, I'm going to wreck my car doing this. So the automatic behavior, once you start paying attention to the potholes, you might have to break out of that. You might have to stop and put the brakes on, or like look in your rear view mirror, like look at the past and what happened before. Look in that rear view mirror and very carefully avoid that pothole, get in the other lane, go around it, and continue on your way. In the same way, that's what working the steps is about. Working the steps is about understanding our behaviors, our dysfunctional behaviors, and especially the patterns in our relationships. When we see, oh my God, I'm going to do it again, stop me from doing this again. I will admit to you that having worked, at least I did the 4 steps. I have to say, it took me a while then to get to 5, 6, 7, etc. But when I got done with the 4th step and I knew all this stuff and I got in a relationship and I knew it was the wrong relationship. I knew it better than all these examples. I really knew because I had done the work. Did I avoid that relationship because I could see that was something wrong? I saw the red flags even. I even said, that's probably a red flag. And you know what I did? I launched right in. In fact, I was rebellious. I thought, I did the steps and I know I'm still going to do it. I don't know why, but I did. And I think in the last video, I might have talked about relapse. If I didn't, briefly, I'll talk about that. You shouldn't be too hard on yourself for relapsing because it's pretty much what everybody does in a 12-step program. You do it, you may do it really badly, or you just might do it in a minimal way, but you know. See, that's the thing. It is not good that you relapse. But then again, if you went into it and you know, maybe when you try to fix it, you're fixing it for yourself. A lot of people go to a 12-step program because they're made to do it. Not an ACA. You're not made to do that because you broke the speed limit and were drinking and driving. But sometimes it's recommended to go to a program if you have done that, or if you had a narcotics, mistake on your record, conviction. I'm sorry. You're compelled sometimes by law, or a partner says, you want to stay with me, you're going to have to go to a 12-step program. And you do things for other people, or because the law says you have to do it. And maybe that's the thing. And maybe that actually gets you to change and do the right thing, and you eventually own it. But you know what? You better own it. Because if you're just doing it for somebody else, it's not the same. You got to do it for yourself. So if you relapsed, but you knew you were doing that, and you understood because you'd been through the program already, or part of the program anyway, at least you know that. So for me, the relationship ended up exactly how I thought it would end up at the very first day, because I saw it all ahead. I still had hopes and expectations because I was of two minds. I can save this person. I probably can't save this person. I can save this person. I probably can't. That's not so atypical. Not something that you should forgive yourself and you should move on. And maybe your commitment is even better. And maybe future almost relationships, will be prevented that are not going to be good for you. Or maybe, ideally, somebody comes along and you know what? These patterns don't seem to be there. And these expectations, you don't even have to come up with expectations because you already see that the person is probably in tune with you with expectations and is honest with you. What amazing thing to be in step with somebody a little bit, right? Or you respect their differences and you realize that they still have some boundaries that you, even though you think you have a strong commitment, you still respect some of their boundaries, and that enables you to continue in a healthy relationship. And even really good relationships sometimes end, and that's difficult. But what I want to say about relationships is that we're always learning. We don't waste time necessarily in relationships, or we don't have to anymore. But if it's already in the past, it's in the past. We have to let it go. We have to forgive ourselves, and we have to understand that we did try. If we go through this program, and that's the best thing we can do. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you know who you have the most important relationship with? I bet you can guess. It's yourself. You know, when you love yourself, maybe you don't put up with some of the things in the patterns here. You love yourself and you have that boundary, and you don't let other people abuse you, and you stop abusing others because you figure that out. So I do encourage you, um, if you didn't do it during the video, if you didn't like stop, which is okay to pause and kind of do the work as we go along, I hope you're gonna like take up this um, endeavor. That's up to you. It's not up to me. And as we do I hope in the next video the remainder of step 4. When you finish step 4, you know, whoopee, because this is the most time consuming thing. I would say it's the most difficult, but when you have to actually go and there's a future step where you make amends, that's very difficult to do. It's a very emotional step. And for some people, it's the hardest one. For me, I was ready to make amends for the people I'd harmed. And we're going to talk about the harms that we do in the next, and we do harms through this, don't we? So it might actually look a little similar to this when we do the next video. We'll talk about the harms worksheet, and we'll also talk about positive things, because we don't screw up everything, right? We do some things right, and we want to acknowledge those things as well. Okay, so I hope you learned something today. One more time, I'm going to remind you that when you choose, it's powerful. And when you own the decisions that you make in your life, you're less prone to hold on to the things you didn't get. You're less prone to blame people. And you're ready to let them go and release them from blame. You don't have to carry blame yourself either. You can get over it quickly, but you could instead just say, I made a choice and I can make better choices, or I can make another choice, or maybe even that choice was okay for a while. Well, thank you. Sounds like my phone's ringing. So I'll talk to you later, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.